Hey guys, it's Danny. Today's video is quite special because one of the most important orchids, if not at least the most important Cattleya in my collection, has returned to me. This is the beautiful Hawaiian Splash Leia. Why did it return? Well, because I lost mine. I'll tell you all about it, and Maya, my lovely viewer, decided to send me a little young one to replace my old one, and I'm so delightfully happy about it. I need to repot it. There are some things that I need to remove. I see some darkened pseudobulbs, and I thought, well, I don't know, it's just gonna be a video in which I will blab about my beautiful Hawaiian Splash Leia and its history, why I lost it, and so on. Maybe it's gonna be educational. By the way, disclaimer, this turned out to be a repot and chill, and I always have to make this disclaimer at the beginning of these videos. This is not a tutorial, this is not meant to educate, it's not like my other videos. Yes, I will give you some tips in this video as well, but I will also blab about my own stuff that have nothing to do with orchids. They have no point, and there is no point to this video. If it's not your cup of tea, that's okay, see you next time. But if you decide to hang around, grab an orchid, let's repot, let's do something, since you're gonna be playing this video in the background, maybe do dishes if you will. And yeah, let's just hang out a little bit. Back to the video. I'm still thinking if I'm gonna name it Repot and Chill, we'll see. But anyway, before we start, don't forget to give this video a like if you end up subscribing, if you end up liking it. I lose myself in my own poetry sometimes. And why not subscribe? It is free and I post multiple times a week, but if you're feeling extra about it, consider further supporting the channel by using the affiliate links down below, becoming a member, checking out the merch, or using the super thanks option down below my video. Righty then, let's start. Where are my gloves? Alrighty, let's start with the history. The Hawaiian Splash Leia, I do believe, is one of the orchids that people do tend to associate me with because I made so many videos on it, and it has been one of the oldest Cattleya in my collection. Not the first one. The first Cattleya I ever had was from a local collector 10 years ago, something like that. But definitely the Hawaiian Splash Leia that I had was from the first shredder order that I made for myself. So it was very dear to me, and when I initially purchased it, when it arrived to me, it was super vigorous. It had multiple growths. I do believe it also bloomed with a lot of flowers at some point, and I had a friend at the time with which I used to share orchids, and she wanted a division, and I divided it. And from there on, I kind of kept dividing it. By the way, what I'm doing now is I just gently pushed on the bottom of the pot and kind of pushed the root ball out. The lights came on in the grow space. If the light tint switched on the camera, that's fine. And yeah, it's a pretty compacted moss ball and it looks pretty old, so I'm gonna have to use some tweezers. If I remember correctly, I even made a separate spotlight type of video at the time with this Cattleya, and I said, oh, she's so vigorous. She grows like in 3 months, a growth is matured, and then she doesn't produce sheaths, she produces buds, and it blooms right away. It's a joy to grow, very easy, very vigorous. Well, that was the case with that orchid, but slowly and surely, it stopped being the case. The biggest cherry on top, in my opinion, was moving here. Wow, more than 6 years ago at this point. It felt like yesterday, but it was actually 6.5 years ago at this point. So the Hawaiian Splash Leia was purchased quite a lot of time before the move, 4 years before the move. So I did have about 3 years of vigorousness from that orchid, even though I divided it. And I got so confident in it that I kind of divided it more and more and more to share it. I am a nice person. So nice that people like to walk all over me. I kind of stressed it before I moved here, but I didn't realize because she was indeed very vigorous. She didn't give me much signs, and the flowers were absolutely beautiful. Did I show you the flowers? I will be sure to insert footage, old footage with that orchid. So I moved here, and then, oh boy, things started to really take a turn. I had fusarium issues back in the day, which is, again, a very painful memory that has to do with people walking all over me. Well, story of my life, you guys. So that whole fiasco happened, in which I made a big mistake, and in my attempt to get rid of spider mites, which were the bane of my existence then, so at the time I said, well, okay, I'm going to try insecticide, and insecticide flew all over us. That wasn't okay, and then we decided to make a bucket with insecticide and actually dip all of the orchids. Now, funny thing about insecticide, it does have an effect on insects, not so much on fusarium. So I kind of spread fusarium to everybody. So from there, all of my orchids kind of went downhill, and I kind of discovered fusarium traces, or what I believe to be fusarium. To be honest, I don't know, I'm not a scientist. I don't have a lab to examine all of the pathogens, but you know, that's what I thought it was due to my research. So yeah, I lost a lot of orchids, and I didn't lose the Hawaiian Splashlea, but it got weaker and weaker and weaker. If you're older on my channel, I think you noticed that I didn't really show you much of her blooms lately, and she started to produce less and less and less blooms. And quite recently, I actually had to throw it away because there was nothing left of it. Very, very slowly, but surely she withered off. It's like she lost all of that vigorousness. P.S. What I'm doing now is simply removing sphagnum moss with my tweezers, there we go. Nothing incredible here. There are a lot of dead roots which we're gonna get rid of, but all I'm doing is just getting the old moss off of the root ball, and you can see it looks old. Right, so I think in a previous video I did say that I want to replace this one. It means a lot to me. It's an important orchid for me, and I want to have a backup, but I didn't really find it when I was like ready to shop for anything. So it's been in my wish list for a while, and Maya, who is such a sweetheart, sent me this along with a few other things which you'll see in the future videos. And I'm so very happy to have this one once again. It's coming from Orchids Deluxe, by the way, and she was saying that hers, she got one for herself, she lost some leaves as well, so they were a little from the beginning, from the nursery. Cattleyas do actually do very good on transport and have become my favorite orchids recently because they don't give me headaches. They're not very susceptible to pests, or the pests that I have here. They like this climate a lot, and they're very drought resistant. Can we see a pattern here? Yeah, that's why I love them. And not really, they're just gorgeous, and they smell beautiful as well. The Hawaiian Splashlea never had a fragrance for me, although some websites still like to present it as fragrant. I have seen no account, nobody on the internet said it was fragrant from their own experience. So I don't know what to tell you about that. Maybe it's not exactly true, but mine has never been fragrant. So what I'm doing now is I'm cutting away all of the dead roots just to better see what I have here, because I do have some rotten pseudobulbs as well that I need to remove. Can't leave them there. The problem is some of these guys have new growths that are okay. I will get you in closer and we're gonna do this procedure together. But anyway, yeah, I was always very sad for losing my Hawaiian Splashlea, and the cause of me losing it is pretty much a multitude of everything that I did and everything that went on in my life. The move was not easy for many of my plants. The switch in climate actually was pretty brutal because it was instant. They had to adapt instantly, and I moved when in April. It was already warm in here. So they moved from a pretty cold weather in Romania to the very, dare I say, hot April of Cyprus. So yeah, they didn't really appreciate that. But had I known what I know now, maybe I could have saved more. But that's the beauty of experience. You don't have it straight from the beginning, you accumulate it, and it makes it all the more important and special. Okay, so now I'm just removing bits and pieces of sphagnum moss that I still have in this root ball, and maybe some dead roots that I skipped. There we go. Right, okay, now comes the interesting part. I wonder if I can zoom in on this, or should I zoom in from the camera? Let's try this. All right, I need to be in the frame now. So, do we see all of these pseudobulbs are gone, but they have new growths? If I am just going to rip them, I'm gonna rip the new growth as well, which is not what we want. Let's not do that. There are a few pseudobulbs which are not connected to the new growths. These guys I can rip, like this one. This one is very old. I just need to be very careful. Hoping I'm not getting out of the frame because I'm not looking at the viewfinder. Need to concentrate. There we go. I got this one out, which is cool. Now these guys, do we see them? They're connected. So I'm gonna leave them last. There are a few more pseudobulbs here, which I can remove. Ooh, only one that I can remove. And actually, I'm going to cut this one away from the rhizome. I'm gonna cut the rhizome. And with the other hard. With the other pseudobulbs, I'm not going to cut the rhizome. I'm going to cut only the pseudobulbs. There is a root here. Okay, so I'm just going to cut the pseudobulb just to see what I'm doing and then go to the rhizome. And ta-da! There we go. If you cannot make a clean cut from the beginning, cut parts of whatever you need to cut until you reach a place where you can better see what you're doing. Okay, we have another pseudobulb here. There we go. There's a whole bunch of rhizomes still left here. Let's cut a little bit more of these dead roots. This pseudobulb, not gonna touch it just yet because it's attached to this new growth. And this new growth has roots. So I'm gonna let it be for now. There's another pseudobulb in the middle, right here. I'm gonna cut this one at the base. So I'm not gonna cut, let's say like this. This would be cutting the rhizome because the rhizome is horizontal. If I put my cutting tool vertical, I cut the rhizome. If I put my cutting tool horizontal as well, I cut just above the rhizome, which the rhizome, imagine, it's a line, a straight line like this that connects all of these pseudobulbs. Obviously, if I cut it like this, I cut the line. But if I cut it like this, I cut just above the line. Does that make sense? Right, so I'm gonna cut right above the line, the rhizome. See? Oh, sorry. I wanted to turn this around to show you, but I pressed by mistake. Alrighty, so let's see. I'm gonna cut again horizontally, mainframe. I want to cut these because they're just going to break down and acidify everything. Not what I want. So this is a seedling, by the way. It could be from tissue culture, case in which it's not really appropriate to call it a seedling because no seeds were involved, right? But because it's so tiny and because we don't know, I'm still gonna call it a seedling, right? It might not be 100% correct, but you get what I mean. It's a young orchid. Right, so I have these two pseudobulbs that are rotting. I'm gonna cut them at the base as well. I wanna see what I'm cutting. And it's mushy. It's mushy. I'm gonna cut this one too. This one is mushy too. Okay, what to do? Let's see. How much can I remove? How much of the debris I can safely remove? Not much, but it's okay, it's gonna dry. Oh, there's another stump here. Yeah, this orchid had a few issues, but hopefully it stopped. Whatever was affecting it stopped. I'm gonna get some hydrogen peroxide. Hold on. Hydrogen peroxide is one of the greatest friends you can have. Not only does it kill off snails, but also it can remove other pathogens such as bacteria and most importantly fungal spores. With all of the rotting we have here, fungal spores are the last thing that I want to have around while I'm doing all of these cuts. After the reaction is done, we're only gonna have water here. So I'm done cleaning it. I'll go find a pot, zoom you out because this is a little claustrophobic at this point, and we'll continue the repotting. Alrighty, so I'm gonna be using a tiny pot for now because I don't envision this orchid growing very fast. Yes, it is a vigorous orchid, but considering we lost many mother pseudobulbs, I don't see how this orchid will just grow in one day as others grow in 10, if you know what I mean. So I'm gonna use sphagnum moss. I'm gonna pot it in sphagnum moss, which is my typical thing to do nowadays. Works well with my environment. May not be the most suitable thing in other environments. You know, that's the beauty of diversity on the market of materials. Some are better suited than others for different people. With Cattleyas, if you're a beginner, I would suggest you start with a more airy mixture such as bark, or maybe a combination with bark and moss. I wouldn't jump to moss directly, because moss has a little bit of a learning curve. I am very aware of that. And for early beginners, it might not be the easiest thing to understand because you're gonna try to learn about the orchids themselves, how orchids work, and there is a whole lot of information coming at you at once. Maybe using moss is not the best thing for you to do right now because you just don't have the time to allocate to learn about the moss and how it interacts with the orchid and the environment as well. Stick to bark and just see how you do along the way. If you find that you have to water way too often, go to a bark and moss mixture next and see how that works out for you. Most of the times it does work very, very well. I am not going to add slow release fertilizer because it's a tiny, tiny orchid. I don't want to overdo it. So I'm gonna rely on my water-soluble fertilizer for this one. And we'll see if she starts to grow really fast. I'm gonna repot her in a bigger pot and then add slow release fertilizer. But for now, we're good, right? Okay, and of course, top layer to protect us from cyanobacteria, because now we know. I made a video on the second channel, and if you didn't see it, I'll link you to it down below, in which I told you that yes, as far as I'm concerned, the so-called algae that keeps bugging me and keeps damaging my orchids is cyano. It's not an algae, it's a bacteria that can photosynthesize and can also release some toxins. So it kind of makes sense now. And I discovered it because I had it in my aquarium, which is very normal to happen in the startup of an aquarium, particularly in hot weather. And it smells identical. And it's the only one that smells. There are other algae which do not smell. This one does. It is indeed cyano, and that's not something you want to have in your orchid pot. And this borders on fact, not personal opinion. Anyway, you can further research cyanobacteria and what it does if you didn't know about the difference between the two things, or if you didn't know about cyano generally. It's a good thing to know about because it's something that could impact your health and you should know about it. And with this done, we are pretty set. I'm going to show you the enclosure because yes, she will be in an enclosure, not open to the elements and thrips. I'm going to water it first. So yeah, I do water after every repot, and the way that I water in moss, I don't go to the sink, I just soak it. I just put some water into this pot and the moss will soak it by itself. So that's the watering done. Right, the enclosure. So the enclosure is this insect enclosure actually. I made a video on it, not sure if on this channel or the second channel, but I did assemble it. I'll link you to it if you want. It is made for tiny insects, but guess what? It is a great place for orchids as well if you want to protect them from kids, from pets, from insects. Yes, it does have aeration holes, but the harder you can make access for pests to come in, the better. It's not going to be 100% efficient, but let me just show you. I have another one. I have a small Cattleya which has no bugs, and it did not have bugs. So far, 100% efficient. I'm sure in the future it will have bugs, but so far, so good. There we go. This is my other tiny Cattleya. This one is not an enclosure for insects. It's one of those decorative containers, let's say, for the eternal roses. I kept it, I drilled a few holes. This is plexiglass, and it doesn't work with the soldering iron. I literally drilled these holes. See, I tried the soldering iron. What it does is creates the hole, but then after you remove the soldering iron, the plastic closes back on itself. Very weird. So I literally had to drill them. But anyway, the orchid is doing great. Are you proud of me? Look how pretty she is. And this is a beautiful, beautiful one. Again, very, very tiny division. And I'm trying to grow it and not set it back due to the insects. So the stuff works, even if it has little holes. Pests are greatly limited. So this is how I'm gonna keep this one as well. And yeah, I shall keep you up to date with its evolution. Hopefully we're gonna see Hawaiian Splashlea blooms in a couple of years, maybe. Not holding my hopes high for sooner because it's a tiny orchid. But yeah, that has been it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed today's Repot and Chill. Thank you for hanging out with me. And thank you again, Maya, for sending me this orchid. I'm so very happy. It's one of those orchids that I always want to have in my collection because it has sentimental value, even though it's not my original one. What to do? I'm not gonna be picky now. I did a boo-boo, I did a boo-boo. What should I do? Go in the corner and cry about it for a year? No. We're gonna move on and learn from our mistakes. Alrighty, so with that said, thank you again for watching. If you're interested in aquariums or maybe other plants, check out my second channel. I post all that content there. But for the main orchid tutorials, this is the channel you wanna be subscribed to. So with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye.